we run the risk now in some programs of setting ourselves in competition. And so over these other things. And so kids and families got this list of priorities and obligations and commitments on any given day of the week. And we can run into the programmatic fallacy of saying, well, our youth program has to be at the top of that list, or at least in the top 3 to get them here, right? About 10% of families will just always put church in that upper tier. Church is super important. We're going to carve out space to do that. They're going to do that. But that may not necessarily be the case for other families. And so what ends up happening is we end up going the big, bright, and flashy route, and the entertainment route, and the super uber duper fun route, so that kids will say, I want to do that instead of this. And you got to have some of that in a really good program. But if that's all it is, what we know from experience and studies is that kids eventually don't find that meaningful or resonant with them. Might be fun to do for a while, but that's not ultimately going to lead kids to Jesus. The other thing we do then is try to put guilt and obligation on parents and say, you need to get your kids to church. You're not making it a priority. And I couldn't be more anti that. Our parents have so much on their plate. You know it, I know it, because we wear that hat. There are so many things we want for our kids. There are so many things we want to do in our own lives for our families. And if a program starts to lean on guilt to get kids there, or to get parents to get their kids there, that's a recipe for failure too. And so part of it is trying to be attentive to the needs of our families and the needs of our kids today, and adapt what we do to try to meet them where they're at. That might mean we have to take a more decentralized approach to ministry and open up some flexibility for how kids connect and how families can show up. It might mean we've had some success even just this past year with shorter term obligations that they can plug into at times of the year where they might have more availability. You don't have to attend all the things all the time forever. But if you could just give me this chunk of time during this part of your year when basketball season's done or theater is through, I can do a lot of really good and meaningful work with your son, with your daughter for 4 weeks. And if they could do that a few times a year and maybe come to this thing over here and there, that'll make for a really positive experience for them, a meaningful experience for them. So kind of decentralizing and differentiating the ways in which families can plug in and get their kids some formative experiences that work in and through their schedules has been helpful. Stop asking families to come all the time to what we're doing and start going to where they're at. When you show up somewhere out there, or if you build a ministry strategy that gets church members to go out there and support kids, that's awesome.
I mean, that's the huge point of where I've always seen youth ministry thrive, is this idea, the fallacy is this idea of you have kids that grow up and maybe they're in a church community and they're supposed to be invested in the church community. They're supposed to be the people that are doing all of the work, that are clearing their schedule to show up to this, to show up to this. And they're supposed to be meeting the church where it's at, not the church meeting them where they're at.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be the people that are making the relationship with the church, not the church making the relationship with the kids. And so we always prioritized touches. It was, how do we split out amongst this group as many touches as we can, as many touch points during the course of the week, whether that's sending some messages, social media stuff, touching in with kids, whether that's going to a ball game, whether that's going to a recital, whatever those things are. How do we create a relationship first before we ask things of kids? And through the relationship, now you're able to have a meaningful moment when you have a group that meets and you go through a prayer activity.
Yeah.
Because you're leaning on that relationship
Yeah.
that grows and evolves. And that's the only way to get investment, is to say, hey, as a church and as a community, we're invested in you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it creates a reciprocal relationship.
It does. You hear this adage now, belonging before belief, right? Or belong, behave, believe, that the inroad to community in Christ happens first and foremost through a sense of belonging. And that always happens in relationship. And so creating those touch points, I think we do a really good job here at our church of there's really not too much a young person can't do at church. Like if you're not a youth group kid, but you're a music kid, or you're not a music kid, but you love tech, or if you're creative writing or artistic, or if you love the hands-on, like setup, tear down, service kind of stuff, there's all kinds of ways to build opportunities for kids to plug in here. And then we structure that in a way that helps facilitate belonging and draws them more deeply into the work that we're here to do. So, yeah.
One of the things that I always disliked about church is it was always kind of one image that was presented, and not this idea that it's multi-generational, multi-layered, that it's diverse across the board, because people's life experiences is diverse.
Yeah.
I had the benefit of coming into ministry in these things, of being an incredibly curious kid. I'd probably read the Bible 3 times through before I ever even, started regularly going to a church. And we looked for a church home for a long time. And I didn't start coming here until my sophomore year of high school. I got baptized after going on a mission trip.
Oh, wow. And,
I got the youth minister as my baptism mentor.
Oh, wow.
So that I could quiz him about all of these things that I had questions and I needed clarification on.
Yeah.
And to have that back and forth. And I got to choose it. Nobody forced me to go to Sunday school every single Sunday. And I got to choose the relationship, and I got to see people invest in me and really see me.
Yeah.
Before I chose, this is the place that I want to be, and these are the people that I want to do this thing with.
Yeah.
And understanding that faith is an exploration, even for an adult.
Yeah.
Right? It's an exploratory journey, and treating kids with that compassion that sometimes the change in the heart happens before the change in behavior happens. And we kind of expect those things to happen at the same time. But there's people that have been here for 20 years that have been praising and praying and have a deep relationship with God that still haven't managed to change the behavior.
Yeah.
And so the expectation for a 14-year-old to have that change in heart and say, I believe, and then to just get in line and behave. Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
Gotta be side by side.